My name's Dave Dubeau, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content. Hey folks, let me ask you this. If you're in the whole raising capital side of things, or you're thinking about starting to raise private capital, bring on private money lenders, limited partners, joint venture partners, investors of all stripes, you're probably wondering, how do I pick who to go after? And our special guest today, Tim Little, is a very accomplished real estate entrepreneur. He's a podcaster, he's a dad, he's a husband, he's a vet, he's a busy kind of guy, and he has really dialed it in when it comes to figuring out his ideal investor avatar and effectively communicating with that person. So, Tim Little, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Dave, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
All right, Tim. So, first things first, give us a snapshot of your real estate investing business as of today, middle of July 2024. What does that portfolio look like? What do you focus on primarily?
Sure. So primarily focused on value add multifamily. We're talking usually in the 100+ unit range. And these are not things that I'm taking down myself by any means. We're partnering with a lot of other folks to do this. Try to stay in the B class side of things. And if your audience is familiar with that, you're right. C is a little bit lower on the rung. A gets really expensive, but you don't have to worry about as much. B, I find, is the sweet spot. Like I said, when it comes to value add, and what we're talking about there is the ability to increase the value of that property through additional amenities or renovations, etc., whatever it is we can do. So right now, my portfolio looks like about 971 units. And those are spread across 6 different properties in 4 different states. And so again, those are things that, started off really small, but then found ways to partner with the right people.
Yeah.
And that's how I became a general partner and asset manager on those properties.
Very cool. So, if you don't mind, Tim, maybe compare and contrast C versus B type buildings, because I think people understand what D buildings are and A buildings are, but the B's and the C's, there might be some confusion.
Sure. And right, I think everyone knows, like you said, stay away from D's. Nobody wants to go that far into things unless you're just very adventurous. Like blighted Baltimore or something like that, which I have looked at and luckily decided against it. But C property is your working class neighborhoods. Rents are a little lower, maybe not as many amenities, right? They may not have that tennis court and that amazing gym, that beautiful pool, but maybe they have a few of those things. And maybe you can come in and add some more amenities to make it more family friendly, like a playground for kids, right? If there's a lot of families at that property, or a dog park if there's a lot of dog owners at that property. But then once you move out of that working class demographic and into the B properties, that's where they start to get a little nicer, right? And so you do have more of those nicer amenities, a clubhouse, maybe something like that. And it also is associated with the year that these buildings, these properties are built, although that's not always clear cut. And there's some disagreement in the industry, as you know, right, on where you divide that line. But
where do you divide it, Tim? What's kind of your parameter?
So
Age-wise.
I'd say, yeah. And so I'd say, like, we've invested in some stuff that's like 80s vintage. And there's still plenty of that vintage that I would still consider B class based on the upkeep and the neighborhood, right, where it is. I mean, you could even have in a 100-year-old A class building if it's been completely, redone and turned into, I don't know, some kind of, Soho penthouses or something, that's unusual. Many new buildings are A class, primarily because those are the only ones that make sense from a financial perspective to build, right? It's
Okay.
very hard, and this is a whole different issue when it comes to affordable housing. It's hard to build, B and C class affordable housing. So
Yeah.
I'd say anywhere from, 85 to, I don't know, 2000 something range could be B class. But again, it depends on those demographics, location, and amenities.
So when you're doing a value add for B class buildings, I mean, I get it for the C class buildings. It's basically taking them from a C and trying to make them as close to a B as you can. What are you typically adding on to these already quite nice properties to get more rent and increase the value of these properties?
Yeah, and so some of that can come down to finishes, right?
Mm,
Or and amenities that we talked about. So one of those things might be like your B class. Again, they're a little higher rent. So maybe they want an Amazon package system down at the front, right? They get packages. They don't want it dropped on their doorstep because they're afraid it might run off.
mm,
So that's one of those amenities that someone might say, hey, this property has that Amazon locker box. The other one doesn't. So I'm going to pick this. Maybe it's a technology package where they have, Nest cameras, and they have, fancy cipher door locks where they don't require a key. Just little things like that, younger folks or more affluent would be looking for, but they maybe can't afford the top dollar properties that they're
interesting.
looking at. So you just try to push that envelope a little, take out that carpet that's not in vogue anymore, and put in that, vinyl plank flooring.
Hey, maybe
What
some of those 80s colors, if they're still around, take those out of there.
exactly,
Yeah.
if 10 years goes by between some of those units having been renovated, they could be pretty outdated, just from a general, you know point of view.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, cool. Thanks for clarifying that, Tim. All right, now let's talk about your niche when it comes to investors and how you kind of developed that niche in the first place. And for our Canadians, I'm saying niche, but it's niche, whatever. It's potato, potato. Okay, so go for it, Tim. What is your niche when it comes to your ideal investor avatar?
Yeah. And so for me, I would say, and this is probably no surprise, people like me, right? Who do we want to deal with? Someone that we have something in common with, that we resonate with. And so for me, my background is mostly military. I've done some, government consulting and stuff like that, but I have literally been in the military in one form or another since I was 18 years old. So those are the folks that I understand. Those are a lot of my friends, and so I
Mhm.
hear a lot of the problems that they're facing. Investing challenges, and I hear them talk about, oh, I have two or three properties that I own, because they move so often, right?
Yeah.
They move every 3 years, and maybe they've picked up a house, the one that they were living in, at every duty location they've been to. Well, now they have, three properties, and they thought they were doing the right thing because they were investing in real estate. But now they're doing it, from afar, trying to
With
manage
single
it.
family homes. Yeah.
Exactly. With
Yeah.
property managers who are subpar, because most of them are, no offense to property managers, it's just the way things are.
Yeah.
No one's going to take care of it like you would. And so they're getting fed up with these challenges associated with it. And that's what I call the landlord trap. And so they're looking for a way to maybe offload that, but they still want to continue investing. And I find that passively investing in commercial real estate gives them an opportunity to do that. They get all the benefits of real estate that they were looking for, the tax benefits, appreciation, all that stuff. but they get it in a way where they don't have to worry about it day to day. They don't have to deal with the landlord headaches, in other words.
Very cool. Yeah. That is smart. And I hadn't really thought about it, but it makes a ton of sense. You're right. I mean, I have an ex brother-in-law who was in the US military, and that, yeah, you're right. Every 3 years they were moving, and I think he had ended up with 4 or 5 houses between all of his different deployments, nice houses, but yeah, same exact challenge dealing with them at a distance. So very, very smart. So because initially some people might say, well, I don't know how well paid these military guys are. Do they really qualify as accredited investors? But then when you look at it from that perspective, yeah, maybe the paycheck's not as great as some other professions, but they've got the ability to purchase these single family homes over years with very, very, beneficial financing terms because they are in the military. So they can buy these houses a lot easier. And by the time they're 20 years in, they might have a net worth of God knows what, $1 million with the properties they have all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's, some of those things I wish I knew or wish I had taken advantage of when I was younger, right?
Yeah.
Because I found out later in life that you could use a VA home loan for up to a quadplex. Had I known that when I was,
20.
in my 20s,
Yeah.
then what do you think I would have done? I would have
Yeah.
bought a
Fourplex, fourplex, fourplex,
quadplex.
fourplex, every place you
Yeah,
live. But yeah.
with 0% down, because that's all you need for the VA mortgage. And I would have just started that ball rolling. Unfortunately, I wasn't that smart. Some of us are late bloomers. That's
Mm.
okay. The other thing I would tell you is on the Army Reserve side, it's really interesting because all these folks have civilian jobs, right?
Hmm.
They have jobs outside of that 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year that they're going to duty. And you
Right.
never know what they're doing in their civilian jobs or how much money they're making. And one of my first investors was a former boss from the reserves. And he was telling me he was interested. And I was like, oh, okay, well, net worth, all that stuff. And he's like, oh, about 3 million. And I was like, excuse me? I had no idea he was actually the CEO of his own company in his civilian capacity. And it's just so interesting, like, to find that out. And you're like, I would have never thought that'd be
Yeah.
possible. But if you don't ask, then
Never assume. That's what you learn over time. Awesome, Tim. So if people are going, well, oh, geez, that makes a lot of sense, but that's easy for Tim because he's in the military and blah blah blah. What kind of what kind of advice would you have to somebody who's outside of the military, who is an active real estate investor, who's getting involved with wanting to bring on joint venture partners, raise capital? Any advice for people to kind of come up with their own niche when it comes to their own type of investor avatar?
sure. And I would say that, look at your circle, your circle of friends. Who are those people? Who are those ones that you hang out with? Who are those ones that you resonate with? And I see this all the time, whether it's, doctors, dentists, pilots, the first people they go to are other
Doctors,
doctors,
dentists,
dentists, and
pilots.
pilots,
Yeah, yeah,
because those are the folks that know them. Those are the folks that trust them. And then the challenge becomes at that point shifting their perception of you, right?
mm,
Folks may know me as, Tim, the military guy. So now I have to shift their perception of me to not just Tim the military, but Tim the real estate mogul or whatever
yeah,
you want to call it. And
yeah.
for that doctor, that dentist, it's the same challenge for them. So that challenge is real. But I think by, showing what you're doing and educating people, and once they see that you've been successful to some extent, then there's some of those first people that are going to be on board with you.
So what did you do early days of raising capital to get the word out to other military folks about what you're up to, and how did you generate that interest, which eventually turned into investors?
And I think that was probably the toughest part for me because I'm not like that, the public persona type, right?
Yeah,
Like I wasn't, on all the social medias doing live things all the time. So that felt uncomfortable at first. But it's really about just having conversations, right? Catching up with people that you haven't talked to in a while. First question they ask, "Oh, what have you been up to?" All right. Well, there's your entree, right? There's your opportunity to launch into, well, I've been doing this and this, but I've also really been getting into real estate and, and just go from there. And that's really where it starts. Then later you can get into the podcast and the YouTube videos and all that stuff. But it really just starts with conversations.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, speaking of podcasts, you've got a going concern with your podcast. Tell us a little bit about that and when you started that and what you've been using that for.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called The Journey to Multifamily Millions. Started that probably about a year ago. It's hard to keep track now,
Yeah.
but just got over 100 episodes. So that was
Wow.
a huge milestone for me because it wasn't something I knew that I'd keep going with. Right? They say if you get past the first like 7 to 10 episodes,
Yeah.
then you're already more
You're ahead
successful
of
than
like
most.
80% of podcasters if you get past 7, I think, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just love having people on, and just like the name of the show, The Journey, I really try to dig into that and find out what steps they took to get to where they're at today, right? Because that's what most people are asking, like successful people is, yeah, but how did you get started? Like, what was that first step? And then after that, and what did it lead to? So that's what I really try to focus on with the guests on my show. And then, of course, we can get into the nitty gritty, wonky stuff of real estate. But I really want to dive into how they got to where they are today before we get into all that stuff.
Very, very cool. So, Tim, as we are kind of wrapping up our conversation here today, what do you have on the horizon? What do you see happening in the next 9 to 12 months for you and your real estate investing business?
Yeah, and so I think like a lot of people, a couple years back, we were pretty aggressive on the acquisitions side of things, and then things, the dynamic changed, obviously. So right now, really looking at stabilizing the portfolio of properties that we have to ensure the greatest return to current investors, while at the same time keeping my eyes open for other opportunities. But that's not the primary focus right now. But again, not going to turn down a good opportunity if it comes in front of me. It's just harder to find and harder to make the numbers work given the inflation with the cost of everything as well as the rates that we
Yeah.
all know are an issue.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, this has been great, Tim. If people want to connect with you and find out more about what you're up to, where can they go?
Sure. I tell them to either go to LinkedIn and catch up with me there, connect with me, or go to my website, zanainvestments.com.
Fantastic. Well, Tim, thank you very much for sharing some insights about how to narrow down your niche when it comes to your ideal investor avatar. I think that's really, really smart. Congratulations on your success and keep up the good work.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, take care, and we'll see you on the next episode. Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewyou.com. Now at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.